Today we're going to talk about how to level your yard. I'm going to be using mason sand with a mixture of mushroom compost. Additionally, this is going to help me with drainage on my yard, which is always a good thing so I don't end up with pooling water in any one area during the rainy season when we get a bunch of rain. First thing you want to do in the spring before you level your yard is you're going to want to scalp your grass. It's going to be easier to level with sand or whatever you're using, topsoil or compost, if you've gone ahead and scalped your lawn or at least cut it really, really low, okay? Now be careful with that if you've got a cool season grass, but with a warm season grass, for sure, you're gonna wanna scalp it or cut it pretty low. That's gonna help the sand really get through the grass down to the soil. And then additionally, when you go on top of the sand with a lawn leveling rake, then that's really gonna help the sand get down through whatever grass is left there and onto the top of the soil and really give you that leveling effect. Once you're done with scalping, then you're gonna wanna make sure you dethatch or scarify or verticut your lawn. That's gonna help get rid of that thatch so that we're not just putting sand, compost, whatever it is we're using. I'm just gonna refer to it as sand for today because that's what I'm using. That way we're not putting that sand on top of that thatch layer and just building layer upon layer on top of thatch. You may wanna aerate prior to leveling your lawn. You could either spike aerate, which is not the best way to do it, or ideally you're gonna core aerate. A couple of reasons you may wanna do that. If you're trying to influence the composition of your soil, core aerating is going to be the best thing for that. That's going to allow you to get more of whatever it is you're trying to put into the soil, let's just call it compost, down actually into the soil as well as on top of the soil when we go through and level. You're going to want to sand level once the grass is fully growing. So that's probably going to be in the late May, early June timeframe, depending on where you live, obviously. You don't want to do it too early in the season because the grass isn't going to be growing enough to really punch through that sand, start getting sunlight and bounce back. Okay, so earlier in the spring, probably around March, April is when you're going to probably scalp. Then you're going to want to come and scarify. And then after that, May, somewhere around that time frame, is when you're going to want to level your lawn if that's what you're doing. You don't want to do it when it's too hot in the middle of the summer because especially sand is just going to trap that heat in there and it's really not going to help out your grass. Plus, you need to make sure the grass has enough time to bounce back. Okay, so we're not going to do it late in the summer, early fall, something like that, because if you've got a warm season grass or something like Zoysia where you're not going to overseed it in the winter, then the grass simply doesn't have enough time to bounce back and start poking through the sand and really get healthy again after that leveling pass. There's a couple of different things we can use to level our lawn. You could use topsoil. That's going to help well if you've got some deeper ruts in your lawn. You really need to kind of patch up some holes. Topsoil is probably going to be your best bet. You could also use compost. That's going to be really helpful if you're trying to influence the composition of your soil. You need to get some more organic matter down in your soil. Then compost is probably going to be the way to go. Now, sand is going to be very helpful if you've got some smaller kind of places that you want to fill in. Probably only want to put down about 1/4 of an inch up to maybe a max of 1/2 an inch of sand if you're using that. You need to be really careful about what kind of sand you're going to use. Ideally, the best type of sand is going to be USGA spec sand. If you've got a golf course supply place around, they will sell you some of that. If you can't get some of that, then washed mason sand is going to be the next best thing. That's going to be really clean. It's going to have no rocks, no debris in it, and most importantly, no weeds in it. You definitely want to avoid play sand, things like that, if at all possible. Another benefit to using a nice fine mason sand or USGA sand is it's really going to work down into that soil as you go around and rake it in with a leveling rake. Also, it's going to be kind of more fluid like, all right? So it's going to move into those low spots as you're raking it around, as we start to water it. And so that or USGA sand are definitely going to be the two top choices if you're using sand. I can't speak much to what type of topsoil aside from the cleanest topsoil you can find and or which compost is probably best. Now today, I've got 4 cubic yards of washed mason sand that I'm going to use. You can get washed mason sand probably from your local building supply place or your local landscape supply place. I got 4 cubic yards of it to cover about 3,500 to 4,000 square feet. So that should be enough. I'd rather have a little bit left over than have just quite not enough. This is the first time I'm doing it, so I really want to try to make sure I have enough and I can fill in a lot of those low spots. Additionally, I got 10 50-pound bags of mushroom compost. My plan is that I'm going to mix that in with the sand each time I go and fill up my top dresser. That way I'm going to get a mix of sand and compost because I do need a little bit of extra organic composition in my soil. Now, to ensure the grass has the ability to poke through the sand once we put that layer of leveling sand on top, you're going to want to make sure you probably put some fertilizer on it. Depending on how much you've already put on there already this year, you might want to put a little bit of fertilizer, maybe a week or two prior to doing your leveling. About 2 weeks ago, I put about 1/2 pound per 1,000 square feet of 4600 urea nitrogen fertilizer. That's already started to take effect, and that's going to help me out. I don't plan on putting some on immediately before or even mixed in with the sand, because then once you use your leveling rake, you start moving that sand around, we might end up with too much fertilizer in one spot and not enough in another. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to level it. I'm going to put that sand and compost mixture down, and then I'll probably come back in a couple of days and put down a little bit more of that urea nitrogen fertilizer to help the grass really poke through. Obviously, I'm going to have to water it in significantly, which you got to do anyways, especially with sand. You want to make sure that that soil, the grass, everything doesn't get too hot in the direct sunlight. We keep it watered. Obviously, the grass needs that to really grow and take off and start poking through the sand anyways. So the different ways that you can spread out whatever it is you're using to level your lawn, whether that be topsoil, compost, or sand, is you can get a wheelbarrow. You can fill that thing up with a shovel. It's probably going to crush your back. You can go around your yard, dump big piles of sand everywhere, and then you're going to need a lawn leveling rake to go and smooth out that sand and work it into all the low spots. That seems really tedious, but it's a very effective way to do it. It's just going to take longer, right? And it's going to be definitely more labor. The other thing you can do is you can get yourself a top dresser just like this. So this one I rented from a local rental place. All right, it's not the cheapest thing I've ever rented, but it's going to work. It's going to save myself a ton of time, and it's going to be significantly easier on my back because I don't have a great back, and I'm hoping this is going to save it. So this is just powered. It's self-propelled. It's got a conveyor belt that's going to move the sand down through the hopper. And then once it gets to the end of the hopper, there is a door that opens right here. And then it's just simply going to shoot out onto these two spinning discs, which will spin it out evenly on your yard. So another benefit of using a top dresser like that I rented is that I'm going to get a much more even spread of the sand all around, which ultimately means I'm going to have to spend less time with the lawn leveling rake trying to smooth that sand out all across the yard from the big piles that you dumped it in with the wheelbarrow. So hoping that saves me quite a bit of time and energy there. Now, once I get it down onto the grass with a top dresser, then you're really going to need to work it into the soil, make sure you're filling the low spots, and just move some of that sand around. The best way to do that is going to be with a lawn leveling rake like this. So this simply got it off of Amazon for about $42 or so. I'm going to post a link down below in the description, as well as a pinned comment where you can get your own one or one similar to it. Take this and drag it across the sand. You'll see later on in the video, but what that's going to do is really work that sand down into the soil. It's going to help you move it into the spots where you really want it and where you really need it. Now, if you don't want to get a lawn leveling rake, or you don't want to use one for whatever reason, there's many other things you could use. You could use something like a drag, like you see that they use on a baseball field, some chain link fence. I've seen people use 2x4s, any number of things like that that are nice and wide that you can either pull behind you manually, which would be a lot of work, or you could hook up to a riding mower or something like that. Then you could either pull that around your yard or drive that around your yard, and that's really going to help move that sand around. But you're going to need something to help smooth the sand out, level it, and work it into all the low and shallow spots. Okay, so I got 4 cubic yards of sand delivered this morning, and I'm getting ready to load it up in the top dresser. You see I've got the 10 bags of mushroom compost that I'm going to mix in there as well. So I don't know how big this hopper is, but you see it holds quite a bit of sand. This is how much damage I did to that 4 cubic yards right now, just in filling up one hopper. So I think this thing's going to be quick work out of level in the yard. Definitely going to be faster than using a wheelbarrow. Well, that's not awesome. Be careful of overloading your bin too much, taking too sharp of a corner, and you'll roll the tire right off the rim. Don't know what I'm going to do now. It's stuck in the middle of the street. I'm going to have to empty it out by hand and then figure out how to get that tire back on there. So that's not quite how I was planning this day to go. So I was hardly even working until this happened. The hardest thing that took the most energy was just shoveling the sand in here. I have now had to empty this thing out using a bucket because it's too heavy really to roll like this, and she definitely won't turn like that with all the sand in there. Hell, I'm not even convinced she's gonna turn like that with all the sand out of it. But as you can see, it's in the middle of my street, stuck, and I've got to get it out of the way. So I don't know. This is what it's come to. This really sucks. All right, let's see if we can even get it onto my property right there, out of the street, and then I don't know. I'll try to fix this tomorrow, I guess. It's getting late now. There goes nothing. All right, keep moving, barely. I'll take that. So now that I've had to go and dump all those buckets out all over my yard, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of having that top dresser, as I've got to go around and leveling rake all of these out, which I was going to do anyways, but now it's just that much more difficult because I've got actual piles as opposed to where it was nice and evenly spread from the top dresser. So not awesome, but making the best of it. I just had to basically go and dump, you know, big buckets of sand out everywhere. All right, so let me show you what happened, how I rolled the tire off. I had filled it up and probably had 500 pounds of sand in it, and I was turning it back this way to head over to my yard, that direction. And as I kind of got off the side of the road here because of the turn radius, and it hit this lip on the asphalt there, and that just rolled the tire right off with that much weight in it. So if you got anything like that near your yard, be careful. And then to fix the tire, this tire, as you saw, was completely rolled off the rim, the bead, you know, there was no contact there, so all the air had gotten out of it. So I looked up, of course, on YouTube how to fix that, because I've never had to fix or reinflate a tire on a riding lawnmower or anything. So basically just got my car jack out and lifted it up a little bit to take the pressure off the tire. Then the trick I saw was to put a ratchet strap like this right around the middle of it. Kind of puts a little bit of pressure in the center of the tire and helps form these outer walls of the sidewalls of the tire so that they make better contact with the bead of the hub. And then basically just try to bike pump first. I didn't have to take the valve core out inside the valve stem at all. Just wanted to try this first, normal bike pump, and that worked great actually. I didn't even have to ultimately get an air compressor, take out that valve core, and blow it up rapidly like that. So this worked really well. I've got it plussed up to 24 PSI like it recommends, and I guess time to give it another shot. So if this ever happens to you on your riding lawnmower, or if you rent one of these, pretty quick fix actually. It probably took me 15 minutes once I had all the stuff out. Probably on my 6 pass now, and I've probably got a cubic yard and a half or so of sand left. And so this thing is a huge time saver. The biggest pain of it all is just shoveling all the sand in there, which takes 5 minutes or so per load. All in all, I'm probably in maybe 2 hours of work tops, and I'm almost done. And that's not counting, you know, putting the tire back on the rim, but the actual fix for that was 15 minutes. So what took the longest with that was having to go with a bucket and empty out the hopper here, you know, 500 pounds of sand, one bucket at a time. That was quite painful. Now that I'm done with laying down all the sand in the compost here, now we just got to grab the lawn leveling rake here. We're just going to work all the sand down through the grass so that it gets down to the soil, and then that's also going to help level it out. So hopefully we're going to kind of push and pull the sand into the low spots and try to get it off some of the high spots. All right, let's see how this works. You can feel really where the low spots are, so as opposed to just kind of pushing in one direction, I'm just kind of working it in purposefully into the low spots. Now the bigger the lawn leveling rake, or whatever it is you use, 2x4, what have you, the more it's going to level it out. Okay, so I'm done. All in all, it probably took me 3-ish hours or so, not counting the time it took obviously to fix the tire and the time it took me to unload the hopper with the bucket, which is not a short amount of time and was not a little bit of work. But other than that, it took me probably about 8 or so, maybe 9 runs to empty out 4 cubic yards. That was just exactly, I'd say, the right amount for about 3,500, 4,000 square feet of yard. You can always get a little more. Definitely better to have a little more than have a little less. Make sure you don't exceed probably 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 an inch in any one area so that you don't smother the grass, especially if you're using that sand, because that sand's going to get really, really warm and it's not going to retain moisture like a topsoil or even a compost would. You can see what it looks like, a lot like a beach, now that I've got it all spread out and leveled out. Where you see the more white is the lower lying regions. I know this because I took a picture of it in a downpour last year and noticed where all the water was pooling, and so that's the areas I attempted to fill in the most. I've got about 1/4 inch to a 1/2 an inch in most spots, except for this spot right here. It's probably a little more. It's just an extra low lying kind of divot in the yard there, so maybe 3/4 of an inch there, but nothing too bad. Gone over it all with the leveling rake, and time to water it and see how she comes out. Okay, so I've gone over it all with the leveling rake. Time to go ahead and water it in. I'm gonna put some extra water on it probably every day this week. I'm gonna water it. It's supposed to be really hot, like 90+ degrees here this week. I don't want that sand to get too hot, smother the grass, and basically everything overheat. So I'm gonna really water it in quite a bit today. I'm gonna do plenty of deep soaks with the water. Then I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of fertilizer on it here in a couple days. Once I've really worked that sand in a couple more times. Over the next 2 to 3 days here, I'm gonna go at least once a day with the lawn leveling rake and just smooth everything over one good time, help try to work that sand down into the soil and just make sure it's all smooth. Put a little bit of fertilizer on it in a couple of days and I think she'll be pretty good. The grass is already shining through pretty well because I didn't cut it as low as I probably should have and would have wanted to prior to sand leveling it, but didn't seem to do any damage or anything, and the sand seemed to work in just fine. Went and got an extra 1/2 cubic yard of, this is actually from Taylor's Landscape Supply. They're at least around here in the southeast, but it's basically a top dressing mix of washed mason sand with some compost and some of their other kind of organic matter mixed in there, that they use and recommend for top dressing. Is only about $5 or $10 more per cubic yard. So taking that and just filling in any extra low spots that are around with that top dressing mix. Just wanted to try it out and see how well it works. You see I've got some spots that are quite a bit lower than the other ones, so that's basically just by hand taking a bucket around and filling those in. Or you can use a wheelbarrow and filling in those low spots. After this has been about 2 days or so since I finished the major part of the work. Saw some spots that were still fairly low, so I wanted to go ahead and get a little more sand in those areas. This is not going to be a one-shot fix for most lawns out there, and mine definitely included. It's going to be something I'm going to have to do again either another time this summer, although it gets pretty hot in the summer here, so I'll probably be done for the year, but definitely probably come back and do it again next year as well, and just kind of continually work on it till I get it to the right levelness that I want. So I am finally out of sand and mix and everything else to put down on the yard. I think I've got it pretty well covered. You can see the dark stuff is the extra low spots. So now it's about 2 days after I finished with the compost spreader, just working in after work and getting out spreading a little bit. It's now time to put some fertilizer on it. And I've been watering it, like I said, twice a day for about 30 minutes a run. You see the grass is poking through pretty well. Where you see the dark stuff, like right here, those are the extra low spots there. This one is very noticeable divot, but all in all, it's poking through pretty well. Again, I didn't cut it too terribly short before I did the sand leveling. And this is about 2 days or so after really being done spreading it with the Topdresser. So now it's time for a little rocket fuel. Got some 4600. Basically, half this bag is pure nitrogen. I'm gonna put that down at about 3/4 of a pound to a pound per 1,000 square feet. So for the size of my lawn, that's only gonna be about 8 to 10 pounds or so total. and that should really help it take off. And then just make sure I water it in really, really well. I'm gonna keep with the twice a day for about 30 minutes a day. I'm doing that kind of mid-morning at about 10 a.m. and doing the second one at about 3 in the afternoon or so. Just right when the sand's starting to really get hot so that it doesn't get too hot. And it's doing pretty well. The sand is still nice and damp when I get home. So that seems to be working pretty well. Of course, after you fertilize, always make sure you water it in. Don't want that sitting out in the summer burning the grass up. One thing that's definitely not a bad idea, I wish I'd done it. Next time I do this, I'm definitely going to, is go around any of those low-lying areas, mark them with spray paint or some kind of marking dye, something like that, or even just put some flags around them so that you can really easily identify those. You know, it just depends on angle you're looking at the grass from and everything else. Every time I come out and look at it, I feel like I find a new spot and feel like I missed an area. So just mark those when you've got a really good idea of them, especially watch them after it rains and see where the water collects. And then, you know, put some paint down or put some flags around those areas, what have you. That'll make it just a ton easier when you're going around kind of manually adding into those really extra low spots.